Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of York. My name's Craig Zumbrun. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm your worship associate for the morning services alongside our minister, Reverend Christin Green. We're delighted to have you with us. After the Time for All Ages story, children and youth will be invited to remain with their families in the sanctuary today. It's never too late to register your children or youth for RE classes or to volunteer to help us build and grow our program. No experience or long-term commitments required. Anyone can sign up in the back of the lobby to help with Time for All Ages, special events, and more. Our nursery is staffed and available downstairs. Our lobby is also equipped with live feed of the audio and visual elements of the service if anyone needs to step out for any reason. Make sure to note other announcements listed on the back of our order of service. Scan the QR codes with your phone for more events, activities, updates, and information for newcomers. Whoever you are, whomever you love, we're glad your faith journey has brought you here today. The mission of this congregation is to nurture a loving community, inspire lifelong spiritual and personal growth, and act for a better world. We welcome all of you joining us in person or online. If you're joining us for the first time, we invite you to visit our welcome desk to fill out a newcomer card or send an email to welcome@uucy.org so that we might get to know you. Let us now mark this time made sacred by our presence by taking a collective breath. Again, welcome to UUCY. As Reverend Christin comes forward to light our chalice this morning in the sanctuary, a symbol of our living tradition, those joining us remotely are also invited to light a chalice of their own. As we gather together this morning, may we learn to recognize and affirm the pieces of possibility, the bits of good we bring. May we encourage rather than control, love, rather than possess, enable rather than envy, allowing our individual gifts to weave a patchwork of peace, the soft, deep blue of sensitivity and understanding, the red energy of creativity, the white heat of convictions, the risky, fragile green of new growth, the golden flashes of gratitude, the warm rose of love. Each of us is indispensable if we are to minister to a broken and wounded world together. In our gathered diversity, we form the whole. So be it. Now, please rise in body or in spirit to join in the singing of our opening hymn together, number 1069 in the Green Books, Ancient Mother, and 1070, Mother, I Feel You.
Good morning, good morning. I am Reverend Christin Green, the minister here of this congregation, and I would like to invite anyone who feels young in body or in spirit to join me on the rug for a few moments this morning, if you want. Thank you. Good morning. Welcome. Do any of you know what tomorrow is? Indigenous Peoples Day. And was it always called that? What was it called? Columbus Day? And do we know who Columbus was? Christopher Columbus? The first European to discover America. That is what they tell us. Yeah. He was Italian, and he had sailed a very, very long time across the ocean blue And he thought that he had landed in India. And so when he saw the people that he met on this land, he called them Indians. And we now understand that Columbus was wrong. We understand a lot of things about Columbus, but now people use the term Native Americans or American Indians. That's also some groups receive that term. And other Native people prefer the term indigenous. So the word indigenous means native to this land. So does anyone know what we should do tomorrow on Indigenous Peoples Day? Don't know. Well, Unitarian Universalists and people who value true stories take time every year to learn about and reflect on our country's history of mistreating Native American people. Does anyone know how Native people were mistreated by white settlers and government officials? Have you learned a little bit about that yet? A little bit, yeah?
How they took over.
Yeah, they took over their land. Did you learn about them taking the language too? Forbidding them from speaking their language? Yeah. They spread disease. They made them change their clothes and their hair and the way they looked. And they weren't allowed to practice their sacred rituals. The government even went as far as taking the children away from their families and sending them to boarding schools where they couldn't speak their language and they couldn't wear their clothes and they couldn't wear their hair the way they had. And they had to learn a completely new life. And I think some of those descendants are still relearning how to live as themselves. For some of them, it was taken completely, and that's really sad. But what do you think Native and Indigenous people are doing today? Where do you think they are? Maybe you've never met any yet, but they're still here. Mary Barnes got us this great book for our library called We Are Still Here, and it goes into a lot of the detail about what happened and what Indigenous people today are doing to reclaim their lives and their cultures and their language and sometimes even their land. So I think some of the things we can do tomorrow and every day is to talk about some things that are really myths, things that we believe because we're told, but that might have a deeper, truer story behind them. I think we should talk about sayings that could be replaced. Like, have you ever heard or said, circle the wagons? Or let's have a powwow. We could just say, let's huddle up. Let's gather together to talk. That's really what that means. But those other phrases were meant in derogatory ways, ways that didn't honor those cultures. I think we can talk about how important it is to be mindful of Native symbols and images when it comes to sports teams or mascots. And I think the other thing you can do is you can go online and you can actually discover, by putting in your zip code, what the estimated tribal territory your family resides on. Now, this resource is not the full story, so keep that in mind. When you get information, probably take it with a grain of salt if it has anything to do with Indigenous peoples, because we just don't have the full story. we made it go away, so we may never recover it, but we can listen deeply and tune in to what might be the truth and ask questions. Indigenous people are still here, and we can still find ways to help them thrive. Would you all please join me in singing together about opening our minds? May your mind be open to learning, and may your lips speak truth into the world. May your heart know love, and your hands do the work of justice. As you go your way in peace, as you go your way in peace. You can be seated back with your families. Thank you. We dedicate time in our service each week to address what we call matters of the heart. In this time, we gather our spirits, we center our hearts, minds, and bodies in a moment of meditation together. To ground us in this sacred time, I offer a poem entitled Shoulders by Palestinian American poet Naomi Shihab Nye. A man crosses the street in the rain, stepping gently, looking 2 times north and south, because his son is asleep on his shoulder. No car must splash him, no car drive too near to his shadow. This man carries the world's most sensitive cargo, but he's not marked. Nowhere does his jacket say, fragile, handle with care. His ear fills up with breathing. He hears the hum of a boy's dream deep inside him. We're not going to be able to live in this world if we're not willing to do what he's doing with one another. The road will only be wide. The rain will never stop falling. We move now to the matters shared by our community. This is a time to share joys and sorrows, small moments of happiness and deepening concerns that reside within our hearts. You may choose to submit something for Matters of the Heart anytime during the week online, or you may fill out a slip of paper and place it on the pulpit before the service starts. I'll also make sure to check in on the folks joining us on Zoom. We light a candle of appreciation for the many hands and hearts who offer their gifts of service. Fran for greeting us at the door, Lynn for providing beautiful flowers, Bob and Steve for serving as ushers, Sherry and Kathy for counting our collection, Tess for brewing our coffee, Joel and Charlie and Zen in the back keeping us online all over the world. May all those whose labors remain unnamed be held by our expansive gratitude and forgive us for our omissions and misrepresentations. May we increase our awareness of all invisible ways we share in this sacred work. We hold one final candle in our hearts this morning for all that remains unspoken within those hearts. It may feel too large or too small to share. You may not be ready to hear it aloud, but please know that our community holds these with you in silence, even if the words never come. We honor all that we carry with us and know that the flame of our faith kindled here resides within us also at all times. So may it ever be. You may remain seated as we sing our musical response, verses 1, 2, and 5 of Comfort Me.
Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. Comfort me. Comfort me. Comfort me. Comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me. Comfort me. Comfort me, oh my soul.
I want to give a special thank you to Ann Hostler and Marion Lawrence and Robert Felton for really making our music wonderful this morning in Gretchen's absence. My mother taught in the education department of a small liberal arts college in Liberty, Missouri for about 22 years before she retired in 2011. And the year before she retired, she discovered that the college had a relationship with the Lakota people living on a reservation in Howes, South Dakota. When her students were learning to be teachers and needed to practice reading children's books to children, she contacted the Takini K-12 school in Howes and asked if they could read to the elementary-aged children online. Arrangements were made, and soon the college students from Missouri began sharing stories virtually with Lakota children in South Dakota. At the end of the program, my mother, who taught me never to dream on a small scale, reached out to one of the primary publishers and distributors of children's books, Scholastic. She told them about the project and explained that most of the children had never owned a single book. They were moved by her witnessing and sharing and enthusiasm to act for a better world. And my mother can be very persuasive. Scholastic Books donated at least 10 boxes of children's titles, and my mother made arrangements to deliver the books the week of Thanksgiving so that she could meet the children and the staff. This was in 2010, so I was already living in DC as a student and couldn't get away for some reason, but I remember that my parents drove up together nearly 10 hours from Missouri. And as she retold the story to me recently, I remembered the details as if I had been on the journey with them. They left the house before sunrise in the morning to try and arrive before the children were dismissed from school. As they drove north, it began to snow. It snowed harder and harder and thicker and nearly became a blizzard. But they kept driving, crawling and creeping along as the snow was getting deeper and deeper. Finally, they reached the school and delivered the boxes of books. The children were understandably delighted, but the staff was stunned and kept asking, "Why didn't you turn back? Why did you come?" My mother said, "I promised to be here today." As they turned to leave, they noticed a giant mural on the wall. It was a map of the United States. And they stood to look at the artistry and care of the illustration. Above the map was written, "With liberty and justice for all." And below the map were 3 words. The first word, written in large, bold, dark print, promises. The second word, lighter and slightly smaller, promises. The third, you can probably guess, was faded and worn and almost visibly shrinking. Promises. I know their hearts broke and broke open in that moment, as our hearts break to witness the living, breathing legacies of broken promises. Before Christopher Columbus even had the distant dream to sail the ocean blue and massacre the indigenous people he found where he landed, permission was granted and even encouraged for such behavior. In 1452, Columbus would have only been 6 years old. Pope Nicholas V delivered a papal bull or a decree authorizing Christian explorers like King Alfonso of Portugal to, quote, "capture, vanquish, and subdue the Saracens, pagans, and other enemies of Christ." Quote, "to put them into perpetual slavery," and, quote, "to take all their possessions and property." As Meg Riley wrote, "The Pope's doctrine of Christian discovery would not matter to me any more than any other papal edict, except that it is also the law of the United States of America." She's correct. The United States Supreme Court adopted this statement into U.S. law in 1823 as a result of the Johnson v. McIntosh decision. However, the culture of conquest began much earlier. Columbus himself recorded not long after his arrival, "With 50 men, we could subjugate them all and make them do whatever we want." The Pilgrims weren't Catholic, and over 150 years had passed since the papal bull when they settled into Plymouth Rock, but the culture of conquest still bled right through. Between 1778 and 1871, the United States government entered into more than 400 treaties or promises with the Indigenous American tribes, all of which have been somehow violated or outright broken by the U.S. government. The impact of these broken treaties is not only felt, but documented in data and statistics and health numbers to this day. Our hearts break open again to witness these living, breathing legacies of colonization and broken promises. In search of how we might be called to respond in this moment, not to get caught in despair, I will share some of our Unitarian Universalist history on this topic. Around 1970, Unitarian Universalist Association responded to the rising presence of the newly founded American Indian movement and their occupation of Alcatraz Island in protest against illegally occupied lands. The first formal business resolution was released by the UUA at General Assembly that year, but it was rather lofty in its demands. In the 90s, resolutions called for congregations and individuals to learn from, support, and act through coalition building. In 2007, a responsive resolution for truth, repair, and reconciliation encouraged congregations to dig into their collective history to uncover the links and complicity with the genocide of Native peoples. This resolution specifically called for people to report back on their progress at future assemblies. In 2009, such a report was made, but not during a business meeting. It was opening worship at General Assembly, I believe in Utah. The UUA then president, Reverend William Sinkford, gave a brief history of the Unitarian involvement in government agencies set up on reservations in that 1870 era by President Grant, who had asked members of various Protestant religious denominations to act as Indian agents. 4 young Unitarian ministers accepted the charge to oversee the northern Ute people then living in Colorado. But the goal was to induce them to settle in permanent abodes and assume the habits and dress of civilized life. Quote, to do some kind of work other than hunting. Reverend Sinkford said, today we would call this cultural imperialism. A new culture, putting a new culture, a new way of life onto a people. Then it was called offering civilization to the Indians. But the results were tragic. They didn't begin to understand the culture of the people they were working with, even these 4 well-meaning Unitarian ministers. Sadly, they had a mythical utopian vision of turning them into farmers, but the land was nearly barren. White Indian agents kept pushing the Native people to embrace agriculture, but it left them hungry and weary. Tensions rose, a battle ensued, people on both sides died, and an Indian agent was murdered, so of course Congress responded by passing yet another removal act in 1881, forcibly relocating the Utes to an eastern Utah reservation, far from the land which they had felt spiritually connected. Reverend Sinkford offered a formal apology in 2009 during that worship service on behalf of the association, where he said, we participated, however ineptly, in a process that stole your land and forced a foreign way of life upon you. We ask for your forgiveness, and we promise to stand with you as you chart your way forward. In 2014, the publication of An Indigenous Peoples History of the United States by Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz resulted in the creation of a denomination-wide UU discussion group for small group ministry. Indigenous Peoples Day replaced Columbus Day on the church calendars, and congregations strive to include truthful tellings of history in religious education and in worship. But is that work enough? The resolutions and the changing of the calendars? My colleague, named Reverend Jessica Starr Rockers, shared with me once about her community studies internship at the Chief Seattle Club, a day shelter for low-income and homeless American Indian and Alaskan natives. She said, I basically showed up and said nothing, explaining that genuine connections felt like spiritual reparations. She also reflected on how real connections didn't make a splash when she brought that information back. A lot of people in UU congregations, she said, are stuck in a learning mindset where they're always wanting more information. That's all good, but it doesn't translate to a sustainable relationship with the people on whose land they often live. Reverend Rocker's work often crosses over with the work of the local United Church of Christ near Seattle that has made a commitment to coming to terms with the fact that their ancestors displaced Indigenous peoples from the land where their church sits. Another local Methodist minister has committed to learning the Indigenous language because Methodists were responsible for so many of the worst Christian boarding school experiences that stripped the language from the people. Reverend Rockers urged that the real work is not simply in the bridge making or even simply in allyship, but simply in accompaniment. As a beautiful example of journeying alongside others, she shared that the protest marches in Seattle area had intentionally centered Indigenous activists by placing them in the front of the marches. At the March for Science, Robin Wall Kimmerer, Indigenous citizen of the Potawatomi Nation, she's a botanist and an author of the book Braiding Sweetgrass. She led the March for Science with a group of Indigenous people and allies in Seattle. Reverend Rockers shared that the hope she felt in the fact that Indigenous wisdom was being incorporated into science and innovation. She also shared the way her heart broke open, seeing Indigenous women at the front of the Seattle's Women's March, knowing that they have endured unimaginable violence and disenfranchisement. A year ago this month, I put out a notice in the Weekly Beacon email calling for those interested in participating in the creation of a written land acknowledgement for UUCY for us to use in worship and before meetings. About 6 weeks later in December, a gathering of about 9 or 10 souls spanning multiple generations began meeting monthly to explore the history of this area. The team started with research and reading and screening films, but it has expanded. Our hearts have expanded. We've gone on field trips to historic sites and visited powwows where team members have started making real connections with others, hearing stories, shaking hands, making eye contact. We are in the process of creating more opportunities for this kind of sacred witness as we discern the best approach for a statement that we would like to share. What could we say that would not simply name the broken promises or console our broken hearts? But what would we instead name our responsibilities as people called to be cultivators of compassion, to be imperfect keepers of our covenants? In the words of the poet Antonio Machado, "Traveler, there is no road. One makes the path by traveling it." Our path is unmarked. There is no map. Sometimes there is no road. But may we journey together in love anyway. Blessed be. May it be so. And amen. We invite you to rise in body or in spirit to join in singing number 86, Blessed Spirit of My Life.
We now invite you into a spirit of generosity as we collect our weekly offering. Each month, we commit to share our offering collection with a community organization that upholds our values. Our Share the Plate partner for October is Pennsylvania Immigration Resource Center, also known as PERC, a nonprofit dedicated to ensuring that vulnerable immigrants and their families have access to justice, safety, and hope for the future. Founded in 1996 out of grassroots movements to support the Golden Venture asylees detained in York County Prison, PERC has grown into a statewide leader in immigration legal services. Our ushers will now come forward to collect the offering. If this is your first time visiting with us, please feel free to let the basket pass you by. Your presence is a gift. Thank you. Please join us in extinguishing our chalice and your home chalices, if you have lit them, with the words printed in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
If you're ever worried that the world and its people are too broken, too wounded, too far gone, Indigenous author Robin Wall Kimmerer reminds us that even a wounded world is feeding us. Even a wounded world holds us, giving us moments of wonder and joy. I choose joy over despair, she says, not because I have my head in the sand, but because joy is what the earth gives me daily, and I must return the gift. Though it seems that our hearts and our promises seem to stay broken, may we continue to receive the gifts of wonder and joy from this wounded world so that we can return them to each other. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. Would you rise in body or in spirit as we sing that song, We Shall Be Known?
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round, attend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now, it is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the world. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
Go in peace, dear ones.